Curvy is a word that's become the politically correct term for fat people. Like, there are actually curvy people who aren't fat, where curvy is the right word for them. But then they also try to apply it to these boat barrels of lard. Like, there's a difference between curvy and goopy, you know? There's a difference between a woman with curves that are like sexy slopes down the body that your hands just want to downhill ski on, and a woman who is basically just a large scoop of yogurt plopped down into a human shape, like batter that hasn't been sufficiently whisked, like the beginning of a dessert where the instructions specifically say to leave it lumpy when you put it in the oven, like the yolk hasn't been fully mixed in and it's just sopping. It's a sopping woman. A woman where licking the bowl is an act of absorption. She takes the batter into herself, like a slime monster sponging up sludge that gets bigger as it moves, like a snowball rolling down a mountain and crashing into an elementary school. No survivors. Anyway, I bring it up because I saw an article, which is where I get a lot of material from nowadays. I like how articles are like unintended feeding grounds for comedians. They're the hapless watering holes, and we're the thirsty elk using them to help keep us going. Serious articles are the best ones. If it's a comedy article, it's like the spring's dried up already. But a serious article is full and inviting. So I saw a serious article about a morbidly obese woman, which is terrific terminology, by the way. Like a woman so fat you can't help but ponder your own mortality. And it was about how she just went to Times Square in New York and stripped down to a bikini for a photo shoot. They call her plus-sized in the article, but it's more like multiplication size. Size squared is basically what we're looking at there, like 10 to the power of Jello. And she says in the article she picked Times Square. She could have chosen a park or a pool or anything far less public, but she made the decision to expose herself literally and figuratively to the random masses of the most populated city in the country. So she's a model, right? Like a model airplane. And so they're setting up for the shoot, and she gets into her bikini, and she says she was prepared to get fat-shaming comments because people could like get right up close to her and a crowd was going to form to watch stuff because it's interesting. But this article has an I overcame adversity tone to it because instead of getting fat-shamed, for the most part she was getting fetishized. People were catcalling her like, I love BBWs, baby. Black guys, I assume. They like to have their dicks crushed for some reason. I don't get it. But so she says in the article how she didn't expect this and how she was fighting back tears and yelling at people for objectifying her when she's posing in a fucking bikini in the middle of Times Square for a photo shoot that wasn't trying to capture her intelligence, that's for sure. Like, how can you be fat and not know you're a fetish? Being a fetish and alcohol are the only two things that can get you laid. There's no way you've come this far in life without establishing that for yourself. I don't buy the outrage. You steeled yourself for fat shaming and accepted that as par for the course, but somebody shows you the opposite kind of attention and you're like, ew, disgusting? That's what you expected them to say. This woman looks like Candyland the board game and she bursts into tears when people hit on her. She says in the article that one guy tried to offer her his mix CD. Damn, man, you know people always be hustling out on these streets. Straight up, I avoid the Billboard Top 100. Nah, man, I get my music on the street. That's where the real play is at. Rapping about living in a one-bedroom apartment and that time they forgot to pay the water bill. But this is such a blatant victim game. She purposely put herself in a situation where the most amount of people could act like themselves around her so she could make an Instagram post and write a shitty article about how she expected to be the victim one way but ended up being the victim another way. There was no situation where that story was going to end in unmarred triumph, as if crowds were going to gather and all start chanting how beautiful she is while tossing entrees at her like roses on stage at the end of a play. So would you rather be fat-shamed or fetishized? And they're like, neither. I want people to like me for who I am. And it's like, well, you probably shouldn't be fat then. We are shallow creatures. Me, unapologetically so. How am I supposed to get to know you if I can't even get around you? And obviously, I know there's a lot of fat people out there where it's genetic and an extraordinarily difficult beast to tame. Plus, there's literally no such thing as a proven diet, since it's all about rewiring your mindset so that you don't crave the worst possible foods and thus create a plan you can stick to for life. I saw a stat where it's like 80% of the contestants on The Biggest Loser eventually gained all the weight back because they didn't create a maintainable routine for themselves. On the show, they had trainers, people to hold them accountable and push them unfalteringly. Then the show ended and they didn't anymore. They only had themselves, and their fat cells got lonely and decided to duplicate and duplicate all over again, and they didn't find it as hard. The Biggest Loser should have had a follow-up show called The Biggest Regainer. That'll crank your hopelessness into overdrive. You do not want to win The Biggest Regainer. First prize is cardiac arrest. Second prize is losing your fucking foot. So I sympathize with the struggle. It's a hard struggle for people who don't have the metabolism of the Flash. But I think you're taking the lazy way out by trying to claim that you're beautiful just the way you are. I think a lot of fat people were like, I can't get in shape, and we're just like, fuck it, this shape is beautiful now, and we'll just call everyone fat-shaming assholes if we get any pushback. Which is harmful to certain demographics of fat people who could get thinner if they put their mind to it, but are instead being encouraged to stay whales because now it's an expression of self-confidence and empowerment, while they feel free to demonize thin girls as like they're oppressors and the benefactors of a beauty standard that's discriminatory because it doesn't include people who are unpleasant to look at. Ladies, name me one beautiful fat person who you wouldn't be offended if you asked me what celebrity you look like and she was the first answer I came up with. It doesn't exist. If I said you looked like Melissa McCarthy, you'd say fuck you. Rebel Wilson, fuck you. Chaz Bono, fuck you. If you welcome a Chaz Bono comparison, you must work in the circus as the bearded lady or something. But so the goal of this isn't to make fat people feel bad about themselves. But being fat is never something to strive for, and I don't believe it should be glorified. It's a negative trait. Forget the beauty aspect, it's unhealthy. It will shorten your lifespan and increase medical complications. Telling people it's good to be fat is like telling them it's good to smoke cigarettes. You're trying to indirectly kill them early. If you can work to do something about it, do it. If you're kind of stuck with it, make the best out of it, but don't expect to be held to the same standards as everyone else. Another case in point here is that fat people don't automatically think other fat people are hot. Ask a fat girl who her celebrity crushes are. You're not going to see Jonah Hill on there, are you joking? She has the same inherent dreams and fantasies of the ideal guy as any other girl. She's just more likely to tolerate fatness and settle for it because she'd be a hypocrite not to. But that 240-pound dude she's with is not her loftiest aspiration by any means. It's really only girls that get this it's okay to be fat treatment, while guys just get the it's okay to have dad bod treatment, which isn't fat, but it's not in shape either. It's a double standard too, because it's fat shaming if you tell your girlfriend to lose weight and can easily get you dumped in the process, but girls tell their boyfriends to go to the gym all the time and nobody calls them out for being insensitive. My friend told me she had a friend who once told her that if she ever started getting really fat, to let her know and stop her. 100 pounds later, people are too worried about being mean. Now she has to weld two rascal scooters together to get around the grocery store. Fat sneaks up on you. You don't notice 5 or even 10-pound increments until they start compounding. I weigh 134 pounds. I've gained 7 in the last 6 years, which isn't a lot by any means, but I'm starting to pay attention so I don't get dad bod myself. If you have dad bod and you're not a dad, you have no excuses. But you don't have to be skinny to be beautiful or healthy. You just have to not be a rewards member at Krispy Kreme. If you look for discounts on donuts, you need a discount on a gym membership. We should all be motivated to achieve our best looking selves, because when you look good, you feel good. Nobody's ever committed suicide within an hour of getting their hair did, is all I'm saying. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.